What do you do during those hour-long surgeries where you are awake? Not sure about the more serious surgeries, but I had a surgery on my foot where they just used local anesthetic. It was a few hours and they did let me bring a book in. So I just read the whole time and occasionally looked around to see what was happening. And tried not to move lol. Had a 5-hour-long surgery on my front teeth where I had to be awake. I just stared at the ceiling and wished I was somewhere else the whole time lol. I had a heart ablation and needed to be awake. It was a terrifying concept outside of the OR. I have no idea what drugs they gave me. I could open my eyes and look around the room, and did not have control of my body. Whatever was in my IV made me literally not care. There was a nurse up by my head who would moisten my lips and mouth when needed. There was nothing I could have done in that state. I wasn't bored. I just existed. I even remember them being unable to stop a tachycardia event. And I literally could not have cared less about it. I've scrubbed for many neurosurgeries where the patient was awake. However, they aren't really fully awake for the entire surgery. They are sedated until we get to the part where they need to be awake. Then they are sedated when they aren't needed anymore. So short story long. They sleep for most of it. For stuff like hair transplants you can watch TV. My husband had to have a spinal biopsy, so local anesthesia only with a little touch of laughing gas. He had to stay awake so they could make sure none of his extremities were going numb. He said the nurse asked him questions to keep him engaged. So he spent most of the procedure talking about trips we've taken, his fave foods, etc. My mom has problems with her heart valves, so it was very dangerous to put her under anesthesia. Most of the operations she's had, she's awake for them. They'd give her a sedative, and she'd just kind of space out and listen to what was going on. She's had 2 knee replacements and a few others ankle and knee surgeries. And her orthopedic surgeon would sing show tunes to her while he was operating. He'd replace the character names with her name lol. She also had surgery after she broke her femur earlier this year. And she watched the whole thing on a monitor. I watched some Star Trek series on my phone for 2 hours during my circumcision. At one point, I stared laughing and I remember the doctor commenting, "I didn't realize Star Trek was so funny. Can you keep still please?" Quote. When I got snipped it was just a local anesthetic, so the doc made small talk while tugging on my bits for 40 minutes. That was the worst part of it. I meditate during root canals or anything like that. It's actually the only real block of time I have to do any serious meditation. I come away feeling great after all that meditation. Usually they have you conscious in order to determine function while they poke around in your brain. They might have a musician play their instrument, or perform some task in order to guide them to the correct part of the brain for whatever surgery they are performing. Audiobook. They usually play music in the OR. I've scrubbed into many of these surgeries. During awake brain surgery, most brain surgery is not awake. They are only awake when they need the patient to respond. This can be for a few minutes or for quite a long time. Other than that, they are sedated to the point of being asleep the rest of the time. Other surgeries, like joint replacements, they try not to use general anesthesia with the patient being intubated. They prefer the patient get a spinal and light sedation if they can tolerate it. So for this they will be awake, but are usually so sedated that they fall asleep for the duration of the case. Surgeons do not want to be speaking to you during your surgery if they don't have to. It annoys and distracts them. One of the surgeons I work with says it during cases all the time, excuse me. Anesthesia. Why am I having a conversation with the patient? More happy juice, please. Less complicated procedures or things done under local anesthesia. You just sit there bored and uncomfortable. You'll usually still get a sedative though. For any surgery, if you move too much, then they sedate you more until you stop moving. If it can't be done for whatever reason, they will intubate you and use general anesthesia. It just depends what you're interested in, tbh. You can likely bring you phone, a book, anything that won't make you move too much while doing it. I don't know, but when I was awake for a tubal ligation, it totally sucked. I had a heart ablation. The only medication I got was a local anesthetic at the incision in my groin. I chatted with the surgeon, with his students and with the nurses. Mostly, they were too busy to answer questions. But I certainly asked. I had extra, ectopic, heartbeats, and the surgery was to remove these beats. So I watched the screen full of different colored heart traces and amused myself by trying to figure out which color would disappear every time I felt the burning start in my chest again. I can honestly say I wasn't a bit bored. But that was the novelty factor. I wouldn't fancy doing it regularly. Being asleep during a surgery and not seeing what's going on scares me. I suspect the real scare is being asleep and not waking up. Try not to get a boner.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.